Get started here, guys. Are you ready for me?
It's not like
What's up above here?
No, we talked about it. Okay, we're going to get going. Good evening. I'm going to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting, the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District, on Thursday, July 20th, 2017 at 5:30 and 30 seconds. Mr. District Manager, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Ronco.
Present.
Director Marshall.
Present.
Director Page. And we have Teresa, I believe, is
Director
on her way,
on the
McNairman.
way.
And
And,
Director Sakowitz is not, no word yet.
That's right.
Back to you.
All right. Call the meeting to order, and the first agenda item is public expression on non-agendized items. Is there anyone in the public wishing to make a comment regarding any item that's in the jurisdiction of the board, which is not on the posted agenda, and which have not already been considered by the board? And the board limits testimony on matters not on the agenda to 3 minutes per person and not more than 10 minutes for a particular subject at the discretion of the chair of the board. Anyone wishing to come forward? Seeing no one come forward, we will close public expression on non-agendized items, and we'll then turn to the agenda, and there are going to be a couple changes on the agenda. We are going to do a brief closed session conference with council, followed by then the informational presentation regarding the package plant options. And after that is done, then we will return to closed session and then move on to items 6 through 16 of the agenda. So at this point, we do have Director McNairman on her way, and Director Sekowitz has now entered the office. What we're going to do is adjourn to closed session and return hopefully in 15 or 20 minutes for the informational presentation.
Just for your information, the closed session probably won't be more than 5 minutes.
And with that, we need to clear the room.
what about the second closed session?
That'll be after the meeting, after all the other stuff is out of the way.
After
At
all?
the end of the night, so
Okay, perfect.
nobody else has to hang around.
Okay, thank you.
You welcome.
Call me back.
Ready? Okay, we're going to return from closed session at 5:46 and report that no direction has been given to staff, and we will suspend closed session until a later time this meeting, and we're going to now proceed on to item number 3, which is the informational presentation regarding the package plant options. And Mr. James, I think you have the names and...
Chairman Ronco, I would like to introduce Chris Hartman, who's sort of the front man for the team here. And Chris, if you can come forward, and thank you.
Want me to go from here?
Everywhere, anywhere you want.
Yeah, right up front.
So my name is Chris Hartman, and I'm with Pace Supply. Pace Supply is we're a pipe and pump wholesale company. That's really our specialty. We are based out of Northern California. We have about 20 branches in Northern California, including one in Ukiah, just up the road a little ways. We also have 3 branches and a showroom in Hawaii. Pretty recent acquisition over there. Our company is involved in everything from, we sell millions of feet of PVC pipe to copper pipe. We are a very large Kohler fixture seller, toilets, fixtures, water heaters, things like that. Within our company, we have many divisions, and the division I'm involved in is really water and wastewater treatment. And we're actually a pretty tight-knit group of people. There's about 8 or 10 of us. Most of them are based out of the Santa Rosa branch, so they're very local to this area. I happen to be based out of Chico. I'm kind of the roamer of the group, and really our region is, Bakersfield to the Oregon border. So that's what I get involved in all kinds of different wastewater projects. And I'm even more specialized within our division in that I really focus on commercial wastewater systems, and that can range from a 500 gallon per day Starbucks drive-through all the way up to, million gallon per day kind of treatment systems, but that's really what I work in. I don't have any presentation. I'm really just here to do a little introduction and bring in some of the experts on that. So what I wanted to do was introduce first a gentleman named Nick Weigel, and he's with an engineering firm out of Chico called North Star Engineering, and he's going to give a little bit of presentation about what North Star does and their involvement on these types of projects. And then when Nick is done, Bob Smith with Basswood will come up, and he's going to give a more technical presentation that talks a little bit about wastewater treatment in general, but then kind of focuses on what the agenda item is going to talk about, which is package treatment systems and stuff like that. So go ahead and bring Nick up.
Well, thank you for the invite. Nick Weigel with North Star out of Chico. We are a multidisciplinary engineering, surveying, architecture, environmental planning company. There's 36 of us in the office. We have been around for about 35 years. One of the specialties that we do is kind of a niche market in engineering is decentralized wastewater treatment, disposal, and reuse projects. That started from our proximity to the town of Paradise. Town of Paradise is one of the largest cities west of the Mississippi that is all on onsite. There's over 10,000 systems on onsite on the ridge with no sewer connection. So they have anywhere from single-family homes on standard septic systems all the way up to shopping centers, hospitals, all on decentralized wastewater systems. So we've really done a lot of work with decentralized water in general. We are also, we work for the Department of Transportation, Caltrans. We do their wastewater treatment systems for their decentralized systems at rest areas, maintenance stations, and things like that. We're currently working on two, one at Collier Tunnel up on the coast, and one in Santa Barbara as reconstruction and rebuild of decentralized wastewater systems. Our expertise ranges from single-family residences all the way to million-gallon per day complete reuse systems for casinos and tribes in Northern California and Oregon. I'm kind of, me personally, this is all I do. If you ask me to build a bridge, I'm not going to provide any help for you. I am solely decentralized wastewater treatment design. My focus is a lot on operations and maintenance. We can put any kind of treatment system in, but if we don't have operations and maintenance thought about in the design process, they're not going to perform well. So that's really a key for our philosophy. There's some interesting things about decentralized wastewater that I think we're kind of on a pivot point with how decentralized water is used, and especially when we're starting to see reuse opportunities in decentralized locations in centralized systems. That's becoming more and more prevalent as uses are found along a wastewater treatment or a collection system where we can harvest that water and use it locally where we need to, rather than some centralized location and pumping it all the way back up a distribution system. So we see a lot of advantages to that, and it's kind of new. The technologies are becoming more and more prevalent. With our drought and our emergency mandate from the governor, there's a lot of push and drive to actually work on these types of systems and try to get some secondary uses for wastewater. And I personally don't like the term wastewater. It's just water that's been used once, and we want to be able to use it again. There's a good analogy for what decentralized wastewater is in my mind, and that's this. This is decentralized technology. When we start, originally we had copper wires, centralized switching stations. You can have board operators at sometimes where all the calls came into one location and were disseminated out. Now we use cell phones as decentralized. It's decentralized communication technology. If you look in Africa at the developing nations, their communication technology is not starting with a centralized system and then abandoning that system and moving on to cell phone technology. They're going straight to cell phone technology. So that's one of the keys and kind of the passions of mine regarding decentralized wastewater. It's really important. Decentralized and centralized wastewater have a place together there. We can't use this technology for an Amazon data center. There are situations where we need larger treatment systems, and they work in concert with each other. So that's really important, and that's kind of my philosophy. So when I was invited to come talk about what we've seen here, I was really excited. This is another avenue that's in my backyard, and I like that it's along the Russian River. I know that there's some issues along this entire watershed that looks like there's a chance for it to be addressed. So that's what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. I can talk about this all night, but I know you guys have a pretty long agenda, so I'll leave it with that unless there's any questions.
You mentioned Paradise. Are there any other communities
that large? There's quite a few. There's quite a few that are only on septic. And this is again wastewater trivia, but the largest municipality with a volume of decentralized systems is the city of Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles has tons of cesspools and all sorts of stuff that are not connected to their current system. But they happen all over the United States. There's communities like this everywhere. And if you go back and look at the US EPA in the 90s, for the first time said that decentralized wastewater treatment is a viable permanent solution to our wastewater infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So it does have its place in our infrastructure, but it's not traditional. It's still kind of evolving, so it just takes a different mindset.
Actually, if you go to the EPA website, you'll find their publication.
Yeah.
Wastewater package plants.
They provide a lot of information. Yeah.
Do you want to say a quick word about the scalability of decentralized wastewater?
So scalability, you can do whatever you want. At some point, the scale gets so large that it looks like a centralized plant. For scalability, for me, in my experience, the trick or the downfall with systems is the scalability from small flows as they come online to large flows. There are some technologies where they won't operate without a minimum flow. And I have a perfect example. In the town of Paradise, there's a package plant that was put in for a movie theater. And we did the design, and we worked with the city, and the city said, you have to use 5 gallons per seat per day. And we said, we can't do that, it won't work. That's overkill. They were required to do that. So they installed the system. They run at about 1 gallon per day, and the wastewater treatment system struggles. Because they don't have enough flow. They don't have enough flow to even generate for the process to work. And so what they do there is there's a package plant that they take activated sludge in and they pump it into the treatment system so it has enough microbes and bugs to actually function and be permanent. So that's the issue with scalability.
You can dial it in.
Yeah.
I mean, the beauty of decentralized is that you can tweak it to a proposed level with expansion that can be added.
Yes. With forethought.
Well, it sounds like in your example, you were mandated at a certain
Yes.
field by policy from whatever the city people decided.
Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't your choice.
Was not my choice.
Yeah.
Was not my choice. Yeah.
So when you talk about maintenance and upkeep, and are you talking about a large staff of people having to do that, or?
It's predicated on size, the sophistication of the technology being used, and the effluent discharge requirements, and the end use. So it varies depending on the treatment system. And I'm not so my job is to determine what the flows are, what the end use is, and then I look at options for what is the black box. We call it the black box that gets us where we need to go. So I'm not really tied to
do you
the
do a
treatment
type
system.
of analysis where you can look at a community where the package plants are needed and say it would be best to maybe put in 3 smaller ones instead of 1 larger one and do an assessment and like that?
Yeah, so there's operational needs. You can overcome any operational need with a pump. That just takes power and money. and you just need to decide as a community what you want to do. Also, the end use, for me, the end use is really important. What are you going to do with the wastewater after it's treated? If you have a location and a collection point that are near a use that can use that water, that's the best marriage, because now we're talking about efficiencies in energy, moving water and treating water. We can take advantage of those.
Not having to
efficiencies.
pipe it long distances after
Yeah.
the treatment.
Yeah.
Right.
Nick, I know there's been some discussions regarding the possibility of 2 units for 500,000 gallons a day and a third unit for an additional 250,000 gallons a day. So to answer Teresa's question about maintenance and operation, if you were operating 500,000 gallons per day, what would you anticipate for?
It would depend on the ultimate technology selected. And if we're talking about the projects that you're looking at, I'd let Bob talk about what he thinks the maintenance requirements are on that. But we'll see it range for a couple hours a day to twice a week, just depending on the sophistication of the system and what the discharge permits are on the outside.
Yeah.
I'd like the audience to ask questions as well, please.
Thank you. Sage Center, from the city of Ukiah. Is this you said this technology is in use in the town of Paradise?
This specific technology that they're proposing, it's a similar technology, but I personally don't choose a technology and stick with one technology. I use a variety of tools in my toolbox. So I do not, Bob can talk, but I don't think the system is actually in the town of Paradise. There are similar projects. Yeah.
What's the largest city in California that is on this technology?
On this specific technology?
Yes.
I'd have to defer to Bob, yeah.
There's none in California currently, specifically with this technology. But as far as similar technologies, and after I get done explaining how the technology works, it will be a little more clear.
Might be jumping ahead, sorry.
Yeah.
My question is I understand what you're saying about decentralized, but this really, if they were to put one of these sort of at the terminal end of their trunk line, is really not decentralized, it's at the end of a traditional collection system.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you deal with the variation in flow from dry and wet weather with something like this?
Well, so what I see here is that somewhere along the trunk line, along the conveyance line, is where you would have a treatment system to be used. And then we use dry and wet weather flow equalization, hold back with storage. Usually I don't know what Ukiah's treatment system flow paths are and what their peaking factors are, but typically those events are anywhere from 4 to 24 hours in length for those peaking factors, and we can just design in and hold back.
Ours is more like 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now you're dealing with a collection system issue that there's a couple ways to go. One is to address the collection system issue and spend the money there, or the other option is to put the money in the treatment and ignore that and just try to take it on. And that's kind of, it ends up becoming but you've got the regulatory requirements and issues associated with that, but then it's just kind of a financial analysis to what are you going to get for the most bang for your buck? If you're looking strictly at operations and finance. If you're looking at impacts to the environment, then you probably want to shift towards dealing with the collection system.
So this would be all part of the upfront assessment?
At some point, you're going to have to make that assessment.
Right.
If you're looking for a solution we need to know what the questions are. And
Based
answer
on
those
which
questions.
technology, how much money flows, all of that will be
Yeah.
considered in that assessment.
Yeah. I can't give you an answer unless I do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are the regulatory and permitting issues different from decentralized versus centralized?
It's kind of interesting. It depends on your discharge. So if you're discharging to land or you're doing a discharge for reuse, those are going to be that's where your regulatory triggers come in. There are some places that simply sewer mine, use the water for cooling towers and put it right back into the system. There are some that are actually treating just to reduce peaks for like new industrial parks, and they just put it right back into the system. So there is, it's kind of the effects. It's the what the collection system and the treatment system is going to be required, and just working with the regulations for, you know, the end discharge is what it comes down to. If you look like City of Chico has, you know, a centralized wastewater treatment plant, but they have this small little company called Sierra Nevada Brewery.
That's small.
I was being a little sarcastic. That, you know, they can dump right to the sewer collection system, and they have no issues with that. But the City of Chico will give them reduced rates if they clean up and treat their water to a lower level, to more domestic use. Then they save money that way, and they're actually using the anaerobic digester and using cogen and actually creating electricity for their, not enough to power their process, but they're actually getting a secondary benefit from that. So there are options. We good?
Well, one question I have is, do you see, we talk about trends and changes that are happening. Do you see if this is a trend that's happening more within the state? Do you see the state maybe becoming a little more flexible in some of those regs because of the technology?
Yeah, this is kind of a side passion of mine, though, but it's regulatory requirements and regulatory processes. I'm involved with a few organizations that are working with just coming up with new regulations for decentralized wastewater. Right now, we're kind of bound. The only framework to talk about decentralized reuse is through Title 22. And Title 22 has some gaps that don't really apply, but there's nothing else to grab onto for regulatory requirements. So there's a lot of work being done by San Francisco PUC to come up with a model framework for reuse of decentralized wastewater, and they put that framework together that they want to use in the city, and are actually offering it up to the state. The state board as a model ordinance to be able to use for decentralized wastewater. So there's quite a bit going on there. New York, New Jersey, you know, along Battery Park, they're using the sewer water from the high rises for cooling tower uses and other uses, and they don't have any issues. California is kind of a little particular. If you look at Australia does the same thing where they're doing sewer harvesting, sewer mining, because they required, the government's required new buildings that came into Sydney. They said, where are you going to get your water? And so for cooling tower and toilet flushing, they actually said, well, we're going to grab this water, we're going to treat it to a level where we can put it in a toilet, flush it, put it back in the sewer, and we're going to recycle that water, and then our processed reject water is going to go down to the treatment system. So they were in a drought condition like no one's seen. So you know, force them to do some things like that.
Is it Honolulu using seawater for cooling towers?
I would imagine so. Yeah. So again, I can talk about this all day, but we got a big agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you mind trying to scooch over just a hair? No, I'm coming this way.
Oh, thank you.
I did prepare a couple of slides. Otherwise, I'm like Nick. I could talk all evening, and you wouldn't like it. While I'm setting this up, I'll see if I can do two things at once, which generally doesn't add to success, but I'll give it a shot. My name is Bob Smith. I am, and I can't do two things at once. With Basswood Corporation, and my claim to fame with wastewater, I've been able to work in the decentralized realm, representing manufacturers for the bulk of for the extent of my career in wastewater for about the past 15 years. The projector didn't wait for me. I thought it was going to hang in there with me. And so the slides that I've prepared are really mostly a little educational in nature, and find after working in
Hit some
wastewater,
lines here, see if it helps.
it'll brighten up, but that would be great. Thanks.
Excellent. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. It'll warm up and look a little bit better here in a second. We end up doing quite a bit of education as far as promoting wastewater and decentralized technologies and a number of different issues. We're trying to promote what we're manufacturing and technologies and strategies for implementing technologies. We heard Nick talk a lot about decentralized. That's sort of the preferred term these days. Package plants, there is a connotation with the term package plants. And it's sort of a catch-all phrase. And I'll explain kind of what package plants, what is involved with wastewater in general. And if nothing else, you never hear from me again, but you have at least then some background in wastewater, and then further decision-making will be enhanced by some of this information, I hope. If it's a total waste of time, please feel free to raise your hand, tell me to shut up, and I'll do something different. But I think it'll be useful. And so I think a little bit of introduction. Basswood is a manufacturer. We manufacture wastewater equipment for treating secondary treatment for wastewater. I'll explain exactly what that means. We have a particular process and a strategy for it. But I'll say this right now, and I'll explain why I say this. It doesn't really matter what you're doing with what equipment. If you're doing biochemical wastewater treatment, in other words, getting soluble organics out of wastewater of any nature or sort, you're doing virtually the same thing no matter what system you've got, period. You're doing the same thing. The clever part is how you do it and what strategy you use to do it. And some strategies involve using a lot more power and bigger equipment, shifting power from one piece to another. Some are lower power but take up more space. There's lots of different considerations, but you're doing the exact same thing. Nick doesn't like this term. A lot of us in the industry don't like this term anymore. It's all just water. We come right down to it. But wastewater, as we define it now for wastewater purposes, is really water that's been transformed by human beings and human action. And typically it's hit once with something or carries something and then is discharged as marginally or unusable. And so the shift in the industry overall is to try and either get more uses out of it before it goes to some sort of treatment facility, or to treat it closer to the point of generation. And that's sort of been a trend for quite a while now. And so some of the statistics that are kind of interesting is that the statistics were a little more solid like right before the economic crisis in the late 2000s, but new development nationwide was running at about, septic systems in the United States. Individual septic systems in the United States serve approximately 1/4 of the homes in the country. And that's not even registered in the ASCE infrastructure report cards. It's not listed anywhere except a brief mention as like, oh hey, 1/4 of the homes in the country are not served by these septic systems, and that's going to become an issue. So these communities like Paradise, like Malibu, California, like they're a lot of places and they're everywhere. And it's not for lack of money. Malibu is not a poor community, right? But there are treatment systems in Malibu that are discharging right to the beach. And that's a political decision that those folks made, okay, more than anything else. But they're all over the place. And 25% of the nation is served by individual septic systems in the yard. But as of the late 2000s, 33% of new subdivision development was being done on septic systems. It was not a decreasing percentage of homes in the United States. And in rural areas, that percentage is much, much higher. 1/3 of Oregon is served by septic systems, half of Mississippi. And depending on where you're at, the more urban the location, the more it's sewered and the more infrastructure there is. That's just the way it goes. But big infrastructure costs an awful lot of money. And so we're seeing more and more decentralized and penetration of other technologies into the decentralized industry. So when we talk about decentralized as a technology, it's more of a strategy and a philosophy for implementing a number of different technologies. And there are a number of them out there. Package plants now sort of refer to this satellite, small plant, modular type of idea. And that can be employed in a number of very innovative ways now. So the idea of the traditional package plant, which was basically like a box car filled with wastewater with some bubblers and stuff, that really, it does exist to a certain extent, but it's being phased out regulatorily because limits for reaching Title 22, limits for reaching anti-degradation rules in Missouri, rules for reaching low levels of nitrogen in Suffolk County, New York. They simply can't reach it. You have to do a better type of system with a little more sophisticated control. And when you refer to those types of systems, I tend to use satellite plant as opposed to package plant, just to distance from that old connotation of putting in a boxcar and calling it good. All right. I told you I could talk a lot too. I think it's also worth a mention of kind of defining what is treatment. You need to know kind of where you're starting, and you need to know where you're going. And treatment can mean a number of things. My friend Mark Groves, former professor at the University of Arkansas, used to say, do you need to do reuse level treatment, or can you just run it through a screen door? What do you need, and what is the appropriate use for that water when you're done? Okay? There's really only one way to get completely pure water, and that's distillation, and that does not, you're not going to put the energy into to get there. So that implies that there's a gradation. You're going from wastewater at some level to some level of purity. Is that good enough to discharge the river? Is it good enough to put on a ball field? Is it good enough to irrigate crops with? Is it good enough to drink? Those are all considerations and different levels of the same thing, okay? Involving cost and money and all that kind of stuff. Okay? So you have to identify what contaminants are in the water. You'll hear a lot about municipal wastewater, okay, as being a catch-all. But that's generally, especially in decentralized systems, not quite good enough. We'd like to have more information about that. So when I look around Ukiah and I look at different things, you'll see like a region subdivision area, residential development, that generates one type of wastewater. Okay? A commercial development, a shopping center and restaurants, that generates a different type of wastewater. Breweries generate a different type of wastewater. Wineries generate another type of wastewater. You can sort of get an idea that the wineries and breweries might generate a harder to treat wastewater than just the residences. And kind of quantifying that, the smaller the system gets, the more important it is to quantify those things. But in general, within a certain range, you can identify that as sort of municipal waste within a range. But identifying what those ranges are, pretty important. And then you can identify what processes, what combinations of processes can do the work you need to get to the level that you need to treat it to. Okay, producing the water that you want. I think this is something that we sort of have an intuitive idea of why do we treat wastewater? But it's also worth kind of thought. And it's basically the effect on the receiving environment. When we're talking about reuse, okay, why to treat wastewater? Really trying to get to a particular goal with a particular use in mind. If it's unrestricted, then Title 22 comes into play. And you can use it for a number of different purposes. Okay? If you're looking for drinking water, you're going to have to get to another level yet. And if you're looking for agricultural purposes or dust control and things like that, it might be a much lower level. Okay, that you can use it for. If it's just discharging to a river, ironically, it can be lower yet. Okay, so interesting differences in levels. But some of those things can be nutrient load. This is one of the issues in the Russian River. So nutrient load, it's really not that bad. You know, what is it? It's adding nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen to a waterway. What that causes, though, is something called hypoxia or oxygen demand eutrophication. It causes excess growth of stuff, mainly algae, things like that. And when those creatures die, then you get a low dissolved oxygen content in waterway and fish die. And that's generally thought of as negative, so want to avoid that. So the oxygen demand is the basic kind of unit that we define wastewater treatment with. The oxygen demand is typically made to be low. So when you see terms in wastewater like biochemical oxygen demand, trying to get that low so that the receiving water body does not lose its dissolved oxygen immediately and fish die. But there's other things like odor, surcharges for higher strength waste systems, there's reuse issues, there's specifically toxic effects with certain industrial dischargers and perhaps ammonia. Ammonia is actually quite toxic all on its own. Nitrates are not toxic, specifically in low concentrations to fish and things like that. So the species of nitrogen, its level of transformation within the wastewater process can actually affect the amount of toxicity and the effect on the water body as well.
Heavy metals?
Heavy metals, of course, can be an impact. Typically, heavy metal concentrations you find are more in industrial processes as opposed to municipal wastewater sources. Even the municipal wastewater sources I listed that are a little out of the ordinary, the breweries and wineries, they're still coming from like a non-manufacturing type of organic sources. crushing grapes, brewing malt, things like that. So the exposure to heavy metals and things like that is much, much lower than, say, metal plating industry or something like that. But there are processes for getting metals out, but that involves identifying the individual metals and possibly a process such as chelation or something to get those metals to come out of solution before it. So there are processes for almost all of those things. But identifying what's in the water and identifying the quality of the water you need on the back end, it's the basis for all wastewater treatment, no matter what, no matter what's going in or out. And all those processes boil down to three separate things. They can be categorized in three separate ways: physical, mechanical, biochemical, and chemical. When you get to the metals, you're looking at more chemical types of things to get individual ions and things like that out of the waste stream. Physical, mechanical, fairly straightforward. We're taking the big chunks out many times, okay? Screening up ahead of things, grit removal, settling, that sort of a thing. And then biochemical, I think this is what most folks kind of latch onto when we talk about wastewater treatment. And it's the process by which we employ biology, wastewater microbes, okay, to digest dissolved organics in the wastewater. It's almost magical. This process really wasn't well understood up until the early mid-20th century. And up until the late 1800s was, still kind of mystical. Germ theory, was relatively new by that period of time. And so it really was kind of magical. And the processes that we use now were developed in the late 1800s and early 20th century without really a whole lot of significant modification, except in equipment to accomplish it, and the advancement in mechanicals and things like that. And so from here on out, I'm really going to talk about that biochemical part, because that's what the heart of any wastewater treatment process really is, the biochemical portion. And it's totally fascinating as a field, but it's also extremely beneficial for the environment and humans at large. So as far as biochemical wastewater treatment, you can break that down into two categories. You can go anaerobic, and aerobic. And aerobic is the side where most biological wastewater treatment happens worldwide. And that basic chemical formula is that organic carbon-based materials basically get transformed via biochemical action and biology to carbon dioxide and water. That's the end products, if you get all the way to the end. Anaerobic digestion can do really neat things and get you things like methane for biogas cogeneration in a brewery and stuff like that, or a large plant. And works without using dissolved oxygen, that's referred to as anoxic, or fully anaerobic, which generates methane and a number of other things. In general, it takes some more doing to make anaerobic processes work, and they're not as complete. Okay, so for anybody here who homebrews, anybody homebrew or make wine or anything like that, those are anaerobic processes. Okay, and you get to the byproduct is the beer, the wine. Okay, the off-gassing of the carbon dioxide has digested some of that material in an anoxic or an anaerobic configuration, but you still have the beer, and it's just going to sit there unless you do something more with it. Okay. And in a similar way, you can facilitate different biological reactions and get things like methane, but you still have an end product that you have to do something with, typically at the end. So aerobic biochemical transformations have been used worldwide, basically, for treatment of organics. And it doesn't really matter what type of system you have, you're doing the same stuff. And so in biochemical aerobic wastewater treatment, if you have food, which is the wastewater, you have oxygen, you have time, and you balance those properly in the presence of microbes, you get wastewater treatment. That's it. So however cleverly you want to try and combine those things, that's all you're doing. And it doesn't matter what system you're doing, whether it's an individual on-site system leach field or it's LA's wastewater plant. It's the same types of stuff. Okay? And so one of the challenges, okay, is supplying the oxygen. And that's where one of the changes, that's where one of the variabilities can happen, is in supplying oxygen to this process. So maximum dissolved oxygen concentration in water is about 9 milligrams per liter at 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Oxygen concentration in atmospheric air is about 275 milligrams per liter. So one of the strategies that we take, and a number of other manufacturers take, for getting dissolved oxygen to those microbes is doing unsubmerged fixed film processes. Okay, and that's one of the things that I'll show a little bit later. But just sort of something to keep in mind. You need a certain amount of dissolved oxygen. You need a certain amount of oxygen available so that the bugs can respirate, eat the carbon, create clean water, and off-gas CO2, actually breathe. But these unit processes happen, and this is just a picture of a rather large plant. This type of scenario can be, you can make an analog to an individual septic system. Okay, from a plant this size to an individual septic system, and anything we're talking about here fits in between, doing the exact same stuff, just in a different way. Okay, you might get more clever trying to do something. So, in a nutshell, it's hard to read, so I'll kind of point out. Headworks of the facility, grit room and screening, you're going to take the big chunks out. This is basically physical filtration, settling, that kind of thing. You have some primary settling basins here. That's where more of the big chunks settle out as much as possible. And that primary sludge then is a byproduct that has to be dealt with. And that primary sludge would then go to perhaps these digesters, and that would be something where they could digest, further stabilize, lower their volume for disposal, and possibly make methane for methane generation, cogeneration. That's a possibility, okay? So this section here would be the bioreactor. That's where you're pushing oxygen into the wastewater to feed the microbes that are eating the organic material in the wastewater. And they're using that oxygen to breathe. And so whenever anybody's been to a wastewater treatment plant, if you've been to one, and it's using a submerged growth process, there's this big vat of water with bubbling in it, and it looks like chocolate milk. That's the mixed liquor in the aerobic treatment basin. That's basically bubbling air to mix, to supply oxygen, so that the bugs have enough air to breathe and eat up the carbon-based compounds. Once you've done that, you've basically created water, you've eaten some of the material in the wastewater, and one of your byproducts is more bugs. They reproduce. And under ideal conditions, 20 minutes or so. And you've created this biological mass. That biological mass then gets settled out in secondary clarifiers after the secondary treatment component, which is this piece. The bugs settle out, creating a waste-activated sludge, and then the clear water is decanted off the top. And that's the water then that would go to, say, a chlorine contact chamber and then out. The sludge that settles to the bottom of the clarifier chamber then is sort of split. And this is where the most underrated piece of the entire wastewater world comes into play, and that's the operator. This guy is the most underrated person in the whole scenario, but he's also one of the most important. He determines then, with controls and monitoring, what fraction of that material goes back to the front of the bioreactor, what fraction goes out to basically be further processed or go to discharge, what gets wasted. So there's a waste-activated sludge portion and a return-activated sludge portion that goes to the front of the headworks. And that process in general is called activated sludge. And activated sludge was developed in the early 20th century and is now, with many variants and variations on the theme, the premier wastewater treatment process anywhere for secondary wastewater treatment. Uses this. So package plants, a lot of times you hear things, something like an extended air package plant, activated sludge package plant. It's using this process. They're trying to do things to make them as small as possible, and historically, they sometimes made them too small. Historically, say they sometimes didn't have enough redundancy. Historically, they didn't give enough capacity so that they kept the right amount of biology in the process to treat the wastewater. But there is nothing wrong with the process. In general, issues with package plants have always been management of the solids and that fraction, return sludge that goes back versus the waste sludge. I even know of a plant, it wasn't a package plant, it was a small municipal plant where the operator had the idea that if he just kept bubbling air into it, the sludge would disappear completely. And you hear that occasionally, and it's buckus. It's impossible. But you get weird things like that from time to time. So you can't, the solids don't just disappear. You have to, that's a byproduct of the process. You have to do something with it. That's one of the small Achilles heels that have been with these smaller package plants over the years. There are ways to accommodate that. There are ways to make these small satellite plants work better than larger plants. Basswood, founded in 2004, patenting a technology that is basically a combination of established older technologies, and it's really an optimization. So again, it's one of those clever things to take different wastewater processes put them in a different order perhaps, or in a different configuration, and accomplish those same things, and accomplish putting the food and the bugs and the air and the food all together. So they contact each other and you get wastewater treatment. Okay? Got installations. This particular installation is a development in Cabo, Mexico. And we'll look at this as an example of how satellite or phasing package plants, something can be phased in incrementally, and some of the ways we can look at that with dual trains, with expansion on a single train, different strategies for that. But first, a little bit about how the technology actually works. The wastewater is put into a vessel that is filled with media. And that's a shift, a significant shift from that activated sludge process. We're going to be doing the exact same thing, but in a significantly different way. There's a number of different ways this can be done. Okay, fixed film wastewater treatment is not something that's unique to Basswood. This particular configuration is, but the strategy, the idea is not. The optimization allows us to do a whole lot of wastewater treatment in a rather small footprint. But it's been done with trickling filters since the early 20th century. The earliest forms actually in the late 1800s in, say, Massachusetts. So as far as taking an inert media, putting wastewater over it, having clean water come out the other end of it, that's been done for hundreds of years now in the United States. Okay? So we're going to take advantage of media, and the media that goes through here, just imagine like the entire vessel filled with hair curlers. It's an easy way to think about it. This top portion, which might be a third to a half of the vessel, will be unsubmerged, just the media sitting in there. And then somewhere there's a liquid level in the tank, and then the submerged zone has aerators at the bottom. And in here stationary is all the media. So wastewater is then dosed over the top and recirculated through the reactor a number of times. And what we're able to do is create multiple environments for the biology to grow, not just one. Not just one homogeneously mixed volume where one bug is highly advantaged with multiple types of sources of wastewater or multiple constituents coming at it. There are several different unique environments within the single reactor. In the upper trickling filter zone, it's basically open and not submerged, so the biology attaches to the outside of the media, and then wastewater is delivered around it, and it takes advantage of the atmospheric air for the respiration. So where I said the maximum amount of dissolved oxygen you could have in this lower zone at 70 degrees would be about 9 milligrams per liter, you're going to have access to something like 275 milligrams per liter of oxygen in the upper portion of the reactor. The middle part of the reactor can be controlled in its oxygen content by the bubble aerators at the very bottom in the submerged zone. So in the submerged zone, we can't have more than 9. There's going to be organics available to digest some of that oxygen. And we can control that here. And that's necessary because the transformation of some of the nutrient compounds in wastewater, nitrogen namely, has to go through multiple processes in multiple environments in order to be taken out of the waste stream. So the oxidative process to get from organic nitrogen and ammonia to nitrates, and then from nitrates to nitrogen gas and out takes a different environment. And the whole point of this reactor, and the whole point of the inventor of this technology, Paul Baskis, was to create multiple environments within a single reactor so that the biology can do what it does best in those environments. Okay? But we're doing the exact same thing, right? We're providing bugs with some time, place to live, media, give them a home, okay? Feed them, put the wastewater over the top of them, give them air, sometimes not, okay? And create a highly efficient bioreactor. One part of our patent involves having multiple reactors in series, which creates, after it's recirculated through one unit, it's a different wastewater now. It comes out, goes into the next unit. That creates 3 separate environments again. And then goes into another one perhaps and creates 3 more. So you've got 9 specialized environments in a 3-unit reactor system that can do all kinds of interesting things, like reduce our sludge yield, and treat the wastewater, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds in that. We can answer questions though. Yeah?
Can you go back to that last one?
No.
So, SCADA control remotely?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
And integrated with whatever system you might want.
Yeah, that's where I'm headed.
Yep. Yep.
How vulnerable are these bioreactors to power interruptions, malware, things like that?
Well, the bioreactor itself, not at all.
Right.
But the controls to it,
Controls.
you know, that would have to be, it wouldn't be the unit itself, it'd be the security of the system it's attached to. So it would be how secure is the system at the plant.
You'd have to have an emergency generator, right?
But as far as that power, yeah, emergency generator, something like that, just like any other plant would.
So cybersecurity and all that, just like anything else.
Just like anything else. Yep, firewalls and that kind of stuff, and that's all. It's about 2 steps beyond my pay grade, but we have some really talented folks.
Well, when the day is done, it's a reactor.
Yeah.
So you have to guard against those things.
Well, any wastewater treatment plant's a reactor. So whatever safeguards are on the current system.
Yeah.
Because it has a reaction process.
Exactly. Not like a nuclear reactor. It's not like not like red lights beeping and stuff like. Yeah, but exactly. My fault.
It's a reaction process.
It's a reaction process.
It's got to be
Yep.
secure.
It's got to be secure, but yeah, just like any other infrastructure. Yeah. Anything else? Excellent. I'm going to keep going. I know there's a lot ahead. So the other part of our patent is in the maintenance of the system, and in doing that, basically we call it a dry cycle. It's not really dry in terms of water, but we shut the food off to one of the reactors occasionally. And that does a couple of things for us. It trims the biomass, it helps us keep the porosity and the pore space inside the media free, okay? And that's really one of the exciting pieces of this system, is that the older style trickling filters, of which there's many of them out there was no way to in situ manage the biosolids accumulation and manage what's happening inside the reactor, inside the filter. There was no way to actively manage that. And this part of our patent helps us actively manage that. It helps us force a reactor to go into endogenous respiration. All that means is that the bugs start to eat themselves, reduce the total solids mass yield so that you have less to haul away. It's lower maintenance. Okay? The biology that's left in the reactor is hungry and it's mean and it's ready for its next meal. So it helps you keep the optimum efficiency, sludge, and the condition of the microbes. So that would be done for a short period on some automated cycle, and then everybody takes a shift in position. So bioreactor 1 becomes number 3 and number 2 becomes 1. It'll shift around so that they're all shifted. They all get a different look at the wastewater. Everything is maintained and optimized and to work at its optimum level. So some of those benefits, and I listed them out to get through here a little quicker, but fixed media, fixed film, as opposed to suspended growth, okay? Most activated sludge takes use of suspended growth, which is basically a full mix reactor would be bubbling air in the bottom of the vat, putting in wastewater, microbes grow, you get the chocolate milk looking stuff. That's from the biology that's living in the wastewater, floating around. That's subject to upset. So one of the other Achilles heels of some of the small package plants from days past, okay, is that if you got a peak, whoosh, you blew out some of your biology and it took a while to regenerate it. It wasn't the end of the world, but it wasn't magnificent. Fixed film addresses that by keeping the biology resident on the media. It's actually attached. Okay. Some of it comes off when we do the dry cycle, but that's intentional and that's going to be controlled. But in normal operation, the water, 1, going through the system is controlled. 2, is resident on the media. And that adds process stability, okay, resistance to toxic shock. There's a lot of aspects to wastewater treatment that are improved by having resident bugs on media. Okay? And we can have a great big population of bugs, which is nice, high density, okay? And a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay? Now, process stability and redundancy built in, a number of reactors, that's the strategy we take. There's other ways to build in redundancy. This was also an Achilles heel with some of the smaller package plants in days past, is that they didn't involve redundancy. They were burned down so that if one component failed, the whole thing failed. Not really a prudent way to design. So a lot of newer systems, smaller satellite systems are built with complete redundancy, and a single reactor can be out of service for long length of time and still produce good water. So lots of ways to do that. Okay? The process doesn't involve return versus waste activated sludge. You're not returning sludge and trying to keep a particular biomass in the system. You're just going to take the biosolids out of the wastewater, and the clear wastewater is going to go on to a process next down the line. Tertiary, all that refers to is the next step. whether that's disinfection, filter, something that gets Title 22, something that does something else to the wastewater to make it what you want. That whole determining what level of treatment that you need. And then modularity and expansion capacity. And this might be one of the most interesting aspects for generating a satellite plant or a series of satellite plants. The expansion of a plant can involve just adding, another unit at 33% capacity to the plant for an initial phase. Okay? And then multiple trains can be employed to increase beyond that. So increasing flows from something that's very small to something that's very large is much more appropriate for many of these satellite plant decentralized technologies than it would be for some of the conventional older style larger technologies. It's just able to accommodate it better. So this particular, we saw a picture of this earlier. 3 reactors, subdivision, high-end subdivision development. There's some pumps in here in this little building and a couple of blowers that drive air to the process. But that's a little bit small, I apologize, but this is what the full build-out of the plant could look like. So these guys here that are brown is the first phase, and so as wastewater increases, there's room for another train. There's room to expand the first train by 33%, okay? Double the system, increase it by 150% by adding everything else next.
So,
Lots of different options.
sorry.
Please.
So you just add I/O points for the SCADA system for all the other add-on units?
Yes. And there's always going to be sort of a cost-benefit idea there, whether that's the neat thing with control panels is that you can add in spots to either accommodate pumps and phases like that for expansion, or a secondary panel can be installed.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what's the approximate size of that community that plant services?
This one right here installed is about 100,000 gallons a day, is what it was designed for. Now, it's a resort community. It gets really low flows at certain times of year, in the middle of the week, and then holiday season, it pops up above its design flow and is able to handle it. So it ranges quite widely. Somewhere I'd say a 10 to 1. It's somewhere around a 10 to 1 variance.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Pretty extreme.
What's the physical footprint?
Physical footprint of that, right off the top of my head, I don't know. I do know that, let's see.
14 by 20.
14 by 20 for the reactor set? Yeah, okay. So 14 feet by 20 feet. And then these reactors are actually 26 feet tall, but they're actually set down about 10 feet.
Below grade.
Reduce visual impact. There's really nothing, there's really nothing that's going to be as small for a given amount of wastewater treatment as something like this. Yeah. And that fixed film in that column, we can have biology. The biology is resident all the way up to here. So. This is just the engineer's version of what that was. So it just shows that all this was sort of, it's all there, right? It's all there ready to go, and only this part was the first installation.
So everything's stubbed, everything's programmed, all it is just to add, plug and play.
Yep, and that's that foresight, that forethought that Nick mentioned.
Yeah.
And some of the equipment might be better off to install up front and just have it sit there and wait.
Well, for cost reasons, yeah.
Exactly.
I got it.
And then some of it, install later and save cost now.
As long as that media is staying, what it is.
Exactly. But lots of options. So then you get to a value analysis, what the operators want, how much redundancy you want. It's a choice.
One other thing that drawing shows too is historically some of the issues we've seen with some of the other package plants is they just focus on the little treatment portion of it. So say those first 3 reactor boxes, and then you have the issues associated with what do you do during peak flow situations. And you'll notice, on the left, there's the bigger tank for flow equalization.
I'll be that way.
That's the kind of stuff that's important from day one. You have to consider flow equalization, the treatment components themselves, even what are you doing with the water after the fact? Do we need some effluent storage tanks after the fact that are tied into the system? And can the flow EQ be expanded as well? But we see a lot of older packaged systems that don't perform well because they weren't considering those things. They just dropped off the skid and they got mounted and got installed, but all the issues with flow equalization or effluent storage weren't considered.
And again, that's part of the assessment, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's a big part of what, Nick Weigel with North Star does, is he assesses the system. We talk about flows, what kind of peaks are involved, what kind of retention times we need for flow equalization, and how you want to face the system. You may find we start at 150,000 gallons per day and we want 50,000 gallon increments, or maybe it's a $500,000 or 500,000 gallon phase one that can go up to $1 million. So the systems can look very similar, but every system can be a little bit different.
Absolutely. So the pieces, we kind of focused on the biochemical part for tonight. That's kind of the interesting part in a lot of ways. But some of the stuff in this building, clarifier, taking the biological solids out of the waste stream, processing those biological solids or storing them for dispersal, those are a lot of the extra super important components that are sometimes forgotten about, in the smaller realm. But this even incorporates odor control. Okay, so it's all that stuff has to be taken into consideration, and admittedly, it sometimes is not. We want to make sure that's all taken into consideration. So some of the opportunities for savings, reduce sludge costs, reduce energy costs, that oxygen transfer component and lack of mixing, we're going to be able to do things and a lot of the decentralized technologies are going to be able to do a high level of treatment for a lot lower power consumption. It's just the way it is. Fixed media in particular is a big advantage there. So reduce maintenance costs, and like I say, we kind of gear it towards folks in the industry who aren't in the business of doing wastewater. In decentralized wastewater, it is seldom that we have a full-time operator available in many of these smaller flow systems. Right? Even in very highly sophisticated systems like a bottling plant for Dr. Pepper, they don't have a full-time operator sitting there babysitting the system. They're making soft drinks. That's their job. Right? So these systems, many of these centralized technologies are basically built for stability, process robustness, and automation. Yeah.
What are the capital costs?
Lots, tons of money. No, it's, I couldn't tell you right now. Go back one? Yeah. I mean, the capital costs on a system are going to depend on everything, from size to what level of treatment is going to be a big piece, right? So determining what you have up front, determining what you need at the back end, and then the piece that determines the pieces you need to put in the middle. And it can range widely.
Question.
Yeah.
I guess one of the value-added items that's not on the list that folks like Sage and Sean and I and others who manage cities or big districts is a lot of times it's based on growth speculation. And if you don't meet that, you're stuck with the hard concrete steel site. So one of the advantages is if you grow more, you add a phase.
Yes.
If you don't grow as much, you don't add the phase.
You don't add the phase.
So that sunk cost issue kind of goes
is
away.
much diminished. It's not completely gone.
It's not on there, so that's one of the values, at least from a management side, I would see that you take that whole growth speculation out.
Yep.
If the economy does this, you're not stranded with bond money and all of that stuff, but if it does grow, you simply start adding phases.
And that's exactly what, the idea with this. And it's not perfect because, like you say, sometimes in some of the equipment, it might be worthwhile to put in all of it up front, right? But, big swag at things, half the EQ tankage is not installed up front. 3 out of the 8 reactors are installed up front.
Sure.
So big chunk of savings that hasn't had to have been put in all up front.
Yeah, I'm just trying to reduce that speculated risk.
Yes.
That those of us in charge of budgets would have to say, hey, wait
Absolutely.
a minute, I got to go to the board again because we need this.
Yep.
Or, we spent all this money, but we're only using X percent because we didn't meet growth projections.
There you go. You can start out as small as you want.
You can tie these in with solar generation systems, right?
It's just a matter of sizing.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with, there's nothing that would stop you from doing it. I would think that Ukiah would have a greater advantage for that than most parts of the world. But I haven't seen it done yet on this large scale, but it definitely would have a better opportunity.
Well, I've seen it done when I was a grade.
Yes. Sure. Definitely possible. There's nothing holding you back.
Yes.
Nothing would hold us back if we had to add another phase or 2. The system's still operational. You don't lose the efficiency of the system as you
You're
add
exactly
component.
right.
Just adding those.
You're just
The
adding.
component just comes and
And you can virtually do it hot. I
Plug
mean,
and play.
System is working, put more stuff in, fire up both. I mean, it'd be almost a hot swap.
Just means you're thinking forward instead of behind.
Exactly.
And phasing is interesting because it's something we're used to in an even smaller decentralized area. City of Chico has a wastewater treatment plant, but the entire north end of Chico has small 20-unit subdivisions, 100-unit subdivisions, and we have decentralized treatment systems on it. And that advantage existed even at that level where that 100-unit subdivision may not get built out for 10 years. So we have a treatment system that has a phase 1 for 25 homes. And then when we get to 26, we have phase 2 and a phase 3 and 4. So that's very typical in smaller decentralized systems, but we don't tend to see it in big plants as much. Usually you have to build that 100-unit plant at the end, and it may sit there for 15 years and go half used. So this is very typical phasing and scaling systems for these types of projects.
And efficiency has not changed.
Efficiency has not changed. The only exception I would say to that is that, like I say, sometimes it makes sense to put in some of the upfront, some equipment's going to shift around in there, but the process and everything else in a 10,000 foot view does not affect that at all. Cost-wise, it's also very linear. You know, one reactor costs as much as the next reactor, more or less.
So looking at your engineering drawing there, I see that it looks like it's about 155 feet length.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not talking about anything that's much more than a city lot.
Right.
Or less.
Now, and less because this is, you know, we oriented this one kind of, this is the way it fit best on that property, but obviously this could be, you know, condensed and put into a smaller shape. Another one of the advantages of a lot of these modular technologies is that they can be form fit to a particular product.
That three-cell configuration though, that's 100,000 gallons a day, right?
Yep, in this case.
Okay, so you would need 7 of those to sort of
Or-
the district.
Or bigger volumes, bigger round tanks.
Bigger tanks, so it'll be wider diameters. But I guess I'm saying that it won't be that size.
It won't be exactly that size unless you chose 100 grand. Yeah,
Well, we really don't know, right?
but we don't really know.
The
That's
assessment hasn't been done.
No.
Yep. So choosing a phase that say might be 500,000 gallons a day, it might look exactly like that, but these diameters will be twice as big.
Yeah.
Or 3 times as big, something.
But same design point.
Exactly.
But you're not taking an acre of land.
Correct.
No, because you're using reactionary chambers.
Right.
You're not using reactionary units. You're using a reactionary chamber.
It's vertical, not horizontal.
Yep, so there is some height associated with that, but we get those other advantages.
What about compliance with discharge?
Mm-hmm.
How is that resolved?
You have to make water that meets the limits. That's the bottom line. So the bioreactor, the round tanks are one piece of that. They do the heavy lifting. And we do that heavy lifting as efficiently as we can, but that's not all of it. And so there's other back-end components that would be necessary to reach certain levels. The simplest version of that would be a clarifier, a small plate clarifier that would reach, 30 straight secondary effluent with no nutrient concerns. But more sophisticated back-end technology would have to be employed to meet something like, say, Title 22 or extremely low ammonia or something like that.
Yeah, you have to have AWT to discharge around here.
Which is, I'm sorry, I'm not
You have to
familiar.
have tertiary AWT to discharge.
And what does AWT stand for? I'm sorry.
Advanced water treatment. So you have to have a filter and disinfector
Sure.
on the end. You can't
Yes.
discharge secondary.
Right. No, disinfection is pretty much standard anymore, so there'd be something like UV is common.
And the other thing that you have to do around here is have your acreage for whatever you do in this basin comes in with storage,
Mhm.
because you can only discharge not even half of the year. So
On the
you
land.
have to be able to store mass quantities of that point.
Yep. Which is also, a huge advantage for the decentralized concept. So you don't have to use all of the water for a huge area. You can do smaller satellite storages as well. Yeah.
One more question on the Chico example that you did. Where are they discharging on the decentralized plants to?
The combination, usually it's subsurface on those. It's a plow drip system, just conventional soil trenches.
So basically a leach field.
Yes.
And you get, a lot of times you get reductions because you go to an advanced treatment level, so your drain field can be smaller. Some of our other systems we're talking a lot about reuse. We have a lot of systems that are looking at, taking off a certain percentage of that flow, going back for toilet flushing, or a truck stop is being mandated to reuse water for the wash. So it's a 50,000 gallon per day truck stop, but they use 20,000 gallons in the wash. So you clean that to a tertiary level, use that as a source of water for other purposes, and then you can use the other water in different ways. Could be subsurface irrigation, could be above ground irrigation to a certain treatment level, could be put it back in the local sewer and send it off down to the treatment plant, but at a much lower rate.
Reuse
We have some
is
systems
unlimited.
within the town limits of Napa.
Reuse is
Small
unlimited.
items like that.
Yes. Yes, there's really no technological reason why you can't do anything you want with it. It's just a matter of what, like I say, you can make it in drinking water. Reverse osmosis will do that. So, yeah, that's, it's not the most popular idea, the whole toilet to tap thing, and I don't care what you call it. But it's a mindset more than anything else. It's a mindset more than anything else. That water can be used.
Any of that tertiary stuff we bolted onto the back end of our existing system.
Yeah, yes. I didn't get specific here just because it might vary from tertiary membranes to disc filters or some Title 22 process or clarifier and disinfection.
Just one follow-up on the question on the decentralized plants.
Yeah.
Is there examples of it being used in a municipal type setting for decentralization?
What would you define municipal as?
Multiple, commercial, industrial, residential.
Absolutely. We have systems where it's,
Serving a vast array of those all from
So I'll mention one that's not Chico, but it's I think a really good example of what you're talking about. It's a small community called the City of Providence. It's just north of Sacramento, right outside of Knights Landing. And it's a small community. It has homes, it has gas stations, it has a John Deere tractor dealership, it has some ag companies, it kind of has everything. It has a school, and the entire town is on a step collection system going to a decentralized treatment system that takes it to secondary standards and then to EVAP ponds. And so that's a good example. In Paradise, what we don't see a lot of combinations of residential to the fast food restaurants simply because it's different properties. But what you'll see is a treatment system for the Taco Bell, and the next property is a 20-unit senior mobile home park, and they have a system, and then the next one is a church. And so it's rare that we combine them just because of property lines. Well, we did work on one kind of quasi strip mall where it's a Safeway, it's a Papa John's, it's a hairdresser's, it's a laundromat, it's a round table pizza, and it's a lot of different sources, and that's the stuff we have to analyze. Starbucks has a completely different waste stream than the hairdresser.
Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. In my experience, a lot of the decentralized folks know a lot more about the specifics of wastewater source than a lot of other folks in the wastewater industry. You have to.
It's experience. I've worked in Northern California now since I lived in Chico since 2005, and I've probably sold over 100 commercial wastewater treatment systems in Paradise alone. And I've learned so much about all the different constituents, from McDonald's to the Brothers Drive-ins to senior mobile home parks to the Feather River Hospital has a system, the cafeterias, and it's by quantity. It's the fact that I have a dozen active jobs at any given year. You tend to learn about those things. Where I find on the municipal side, it tends to be one big municipal job every few years where we're doing dozens of jobs a year. So you learn a lot about those waste streams, which you learn the problems with them too.
You can have mixed waste streams.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, mixed waste streams are oftentimes easier to deal with.
So the idea that,
Because
this will only work for residential if we set it up.
Dilution and
residential,
modulation.
Commercial.
Yeah, so,
The mixed waste stream is designed to handle that.
The hardest is a 500 gallon per day coffee shop.
Yeah.
If it's a 500 gallon per day coffee shop and 4 bedroom homes, my life just got easier because we're diluting the acid and the low pH and the coffee grounds and all those issues, the backwash from the, espresso machine and stuff like that. So we find it's these types of towns and facilities where co-mingling lots of different sources oftentimes helps dilute out some of the problem channels.
But it's a matter of identification. So if a particular plant makes sense and it's mostly commercial, industrial, that just has to be identified, and it can be accommodated. If it's mostly residential subdivision stuff, then that can be identified and accommodated as well.
I'll be thinking twice now when I go to a Starbucks. I never realized they were so toxic.
I tell you, you know, one of my examples I didn't throw in here, but I'll throw it real quick just for the fun of it, is, you know, wastewater, municipal wastewater, in general, is sometimes it has like 250 BOD, and that stands for biochemical oxygen. And that's just a measurement for wastewater strength, about 250. Wastewater coming out of a septic tank would be about 150, because some of the salt is taken out, something like that. The BOD in a can of soda is about 95,000 milligrams per liter. The constituents we're talking about.
That's why you're supposed to drink it.
That's why you're supposed to drink it. Body digests a lot of this stuff and makes it easier for us to deal with on the back end as far as wastewater goes.
Well, that's why soda syrup is considered hazmat too.
It's surprising though, because the stuff that we're talking about is measured in parts per million, milligrams per liter is parts per million. And so you're talking about tiny fractions of a percent of contaminant that we're talking about removing for one. Removing it for as inexpensive as we do for two. And these tiny little fractions are what make it sewage. And there's lots of other sources.
I would also think that there'd be a difference between organic and non-organic.
Very much so.
Organic and inorganic.
Yep. So the inorganic stuff generally is just filtration. You got to pull that stuff out. It's the digestibles that become more complex, and that's what all the wastewater treatment stuff that we've been talking about. It's all about the organic stuff. The other stuff, you know, physical filtration, grit removal, settling, that stuff is a lot of times fairly straightforward.
It's something too, you know, a lot of the packaged plants of the past were really, the way they operated, the way their technology was handled it was really geared toward residential strength waste. You like commercial municipal waste, and when you threw in that Taco Bell and that McDonald's, that's no problem. They weren't meant to deal with fast oils and freight, they were really high organic waste. Bob didn't touch on it as much because it's not as applicable here, but you know, the basswood system is really geared for some pretty heavy-duty industrial applications. Maybe Bob can mention some of the other projects. So we kind of laugh now when we look at the fast food restaurants and the wineries and stuff like that, because that's what we now deal with on a day-to-day basis. Where 5 years ago, that was very scary for us and other treatment system technology. So
Well, the old systems with a trailer system, and you're using a tower system.
Yes.
The old system is physically, you would call a box.
Yeah. Looked like a boxcar.
Yeah, because I see them all over grading, because that's what they bring in.
Exactly. And that makes a lot of sense from a transportation standpoint, so there's advantages to that.
It's a quick fix, but it's not a permanent fix. But a tower is a lot smarter.
I think, we think so.
Because you're using a process in a
Yep, multiple processes within the same reaction chamber. And this process, I'm really excited to be on board with Basswood because it is one of the first times when I've been able to have a green light to approach some of these higher difficulty waste streams. So a lot of the waste streams that we have great success with now are things like food and beverage, Snapple, Dr. Pepper bottling, you know, that kind of thing, where the BOD from, you know, sewage at 250, and we're talking about BODs in the 4,000 range. And it handles it very, very well. And it's a function of the fixed film. You know, that's a piece of it.
factory too, the roof. The amount of hazmat that goes down.
Exactly. So that fixed film piece is super important for these smaller plants. Are we going to do a 50 million gallon a day thing for LA? Probably not with this technology. But for a lot of what we're talking about here, it's ideal. And so it's the right tool for right job.
Well, the same process worked, it used to be larger.
Yeah.
And preparing for this board meeting and reading about your product a little bit, I came across the term toxic shock. What is toxic shock in a bioreactor? How disruptive is it? How is it prevented?
Toxic shock, as opposed to the human affliction, basically refers to, just imagine something like, say, for school. It's a good example that we run into from time to time in the decentralized world. School gets out for the summer, very little normal wastewater going through the system from the kiddos, and then they strip the floors and dump it all in the sink. So really low dilution factor, but then they put all the stripping chemicals for all that nice shiny vinyl floor into the sink, and that kills off some of the biology, hammers it. That's what we refer to as a toxic shock. And it can be anything from cleaning chemicals to even process chemicals, or even within the process in a plant, some of the processes require heavy-duty disinfections and things like that. So their strategies for really extreme cases are flow EQ for some pollution with non-toxic wastewater, and frankly, it's a function also of biofilms on that media are much more resistant to toxic shock loading than smaller flocks of biology floating around in suspended growth.
And Bob, I think we can take it a step further. We've got plants, we've got ingredient plants, beverage plants. You figure out which plants are efficient, which ones aren't. And the ones that aren't make mistakes in their production, and they'll dump entire truckloads of product into our system. And other systems have failed, the bugs have died, and the system needs weeks to reboot, months to reboot. In our system, we go into the dry cycle that Bob talked to, and the two reactors keep working, the process keeps going on, and then within 24 hours, that third reactor is back up and running. So it may make the bugs a little sick, but it doesn't kill them.
So you're using a chemical sensor system.
There's a number of different feedback
That's
mechanisms.
a fancy word for it, but yeah.
Yep, absolutely. For pH, a lot of times it's a pH spike or one way or the other that will indicate something.
Yeah, you can read what level monitor.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of process control stuff going on there too to help with stability, measurement of dissolved oxygen, lots of things happening in there along with it. All of it automated.
And those particular modules could be added as necessary as well. I mean, you can add different sensors for treatment.
Absolutely. As a matter of course, there'd be a number of that sensing equipment put in there anyway, just to monitor the process.
And again, it's all automated.
Yes.
Once the range on the SCADA system gets exceeded, alarm goes off. And all that time.
Yep. Yep, exactly. Any other questions? It was a long night ahead of some folks here.
That's nice, thank you.
Thank you very, very much for your time.
Well, thank you for your time.
It will turn itself off.
Well, Joe, I think that you probably had a little bit of experience in the past with possibly some of these systems and the creation.
Alaska, Hawaii, where they don't have readily available access to traditional piping, power. I know in Hawaii, a lot of the new homeless encampments, which are being built outside of Honolulu proper, where they have to go through volcanic rock, or they have to go through a problem to get power out to remote parts of the island. They're using solar to generate the energy to run the systems. We're also using under the unit containment, and then they'll bring a truck in and pump it out. So it's just a variation of what your specific need is, and that's why I kept asking a question about assessment. That's the most critical part of this, and it's kind of a project called, a process called slow is fast. Take all the time up front to get it right, and don't try to hurry through it and get a wrong result at the other end. So my personal experience has been in remote sites from Anchorage to Hawaii, all of the islands in Hawaii and the mainland.
It works.
Well, it works because, as Bob said, it's a spot location that is ideal for this application. It's not a broad brush, works anywhere, you know, hey, we'll build a 150 MGD plant. That's not what you're going to do.
Okay. Well, presentation's over. Any other questions, comments? We'll move on then to item number 6, which is a consent calendar. Are there any board members wishing to pull an item from the consent calendar for further review?
I move that we accept the consent calendar.
I second.
Any review, any comments from the public?
Is there a board packet available to the public?
Yes.
Fine. sent to the city.
Would be something that ought to be available.
It's available.
People watching the.
Paul? He's asking for this?
Yeah, sure.
Oh.
Yeah, I think they.
All that I can open, for your reference, all that I can open on the website is just the agenda and none of the items. So if you're going to review.
The city of Ukiah is sent a copy of the agenda and all the items as per request at the same time it goes out to them.
That's fantastic, and I'm a member of the district, I live in the district, and I'd like to be able to access it on the internet. So it's maybe a future agenda item.
And actually, it's being addressed, I believe, on one of the items on the agenda about technology, and we're trying to upgrade what we have, and we are going to get it addressed.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairperson, we were conferring with staff, we haven't received the packets.
Yeah, last 2 meetings we haven't got.
I've got verification they were sent to you via email to you directly, Sean. Sage, I'm sorry. It was sent to you directly on Monday morning.
I'll definitely check my email. I appreciate that.
Okay.
It was, thank you.
If it wasn't, let us know and we'll try to correct it.
Okay,
We'll figure out what the problem is.
And posting it on the website is a very definite.
Yeah, we're gonna get there. The technology, we just need to upgrade our website and our email, and that's planned for next week based on board direction today.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carries. Move on to item number 7, reported payments, the profit and loss statement, check register, which are included. Comments? Questions?
Just a comment to Sage and the staff and the audience. Not only am I new, but our admin is new. So we're both learning what technology capabilities, and that goes into this check register as well, Mr. Chairman. So we'll get there. It's just wading through some new training.
Okay, I'm just curious, it says consent calendar, or what have you got, consent calendar, I just list consent calendar, but I don't see where there actually are consent calendar items up there.
Should
We
be
passed
7,
that
right?
item that we were now
Right,
on item
Doug?
number 7.
Shouldn't consent calendar have been 7 and 8? No, just depends on what part of the
Item number 8.
You approved the consent calendar, you know what you're.
No, right, and there should have been a list of what was being approved.
Yeah, that's it. Because I didn't remember any consent calendar items for approval, Doug.
There wasn't any.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in reported payments.
So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, sorry.
We're on to item number 7, reported payments,
that should have been on there.
which are pages 1 and 2, profit and loss, and the profit and loss check, detail, pages 1 through 4. Any member have any questions?
Nope, no questions.
Any members of the audience have any questions?
Sorry, which item?
7?
Sorry.
No.
That's for the next one.
No questions?
The motion to approve the P&L and check register.
So moved.
And I second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Item number 8, approval of board minutes of the meeting of June 15th, 2017. Any director have any corrections, alterations, modifications to the minutes?
No.
We would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
second.
I had a comment on those, it was just that they wasn't on June 15th, it was on June 21st.
The meeting? Yeah.
It says up
The
in
minutes
right at the
say
top, it
June
was adjourned.
21st.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, but on the agenda, it's June, it says June 15th.
Yeah, I think on the minutes it says 21st, but not on the agenda.
Right, on the agenda, it says the 15th. And the meeting was on the 21st.
It's confusing because it was
Motion
scheduled the
for-
15th.
It was scheduled the
and,
15th
yeah,
and then
so-
kept
Continued.
moving.
Right, continue, yeah.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Move on to item number 9, bar screen installation project. Mr. Tate, do you have,
Just a couple of comments. I don't have anything specific other than it's a new project to me. Obviously, I know the board's well aware of it from past discussions with the city. So I had an opportunity to tour the plant with the city staff, with Sean and Andy and Jared, right, Sean? Sean, Andy, and Jared. So I was taken to the location where the proposed bar screen would go. And just a couple of questions, Sean, that we didn't have time for at the on the tour. The bar screen itself is here, right?
Yeah, it's over there right now.
And the last visit that we were all here when you gave us the recent quote, that's for installation.
Yes.
Everybody understand that?
Yep.
That quote was just for installation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what did that come out?
A lot.
Around 120.
120, okay. But it wasn't as high as the first bid that we got.
No, it was, I think around 40,000 less.
It's a lot more than the original assessment.
well, I understand that action is necessary on items over $100,000 for both parties to the agreement to approve the expenditure. So we don't have in our package the actual bid that was submitted for the bar screen.
Right.
So I think that we need to bring that forward as an approval item, which we can't do tonight without the,
We did. We had it at the last meeting.
Yeah.
I don't think I have it.
Hold on.
I thought we did.
Because I didn't end up with that document. It was somebody at the board table who ended up with it.
Do we have an estimated time when it'll be installed?
Well, we're waiting for approval first, and then once we do that, we'll make arrangements with the board regulator if they do approve it. They've extended it for another 15 days, I believe. We were anticipating you could give a thumbs up or down this evening.
We saw it last meeting.
Doug?
Yeah.
Is there a way to do a conditional approval based on what we were presented and then?
You can look at it, it's on the city's website right now. It was agenda item 12B on June 21st.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't get to see it last time because it was given to the board.
But long and short of it, they want to put it in soon because the whole trick for that installation is getting it accomplished during the low flow period.
Correct.
And the reason it was higher last time is we were really trying to push it in at the end of the year. People were concerned about extra costs for bypass management.
can we take action without actually having the document from us?
It's been presented and I believe it's been reviewed by the board or able to review. You can take action on it. It's, it is on the agenda of the bar screen installation project.
That's what I
And
said.
if the board wants to take action and approve it, I'm not sure what the conditions would be, if there would be any. We know the dollar amount it's been discussed with this board many times, the reason for it and the necessity of it. And so it's just up to the board whether they want to approve that. And I guess one question is, of that 120,000 plus, what is the district share?
Yeah. And that would be assigned on a pro rata basis, and I don't have that percentage in front of me, so I don't know.
Just for clarification for the distribution, to not only was it brought to the board for presentation, but it was also emailed to Chair Ronco and the district manager email for the district's request of how we communicate with the district on June 13th.
Okay.
And it was also noticed at that time that the city would be working to take, would be agendizing everything on our agenda. We then provided notification afterwards that we did take action on it, and that was contingent upon the board taking action. The board did not take action. We worked with the contractor to extend the bid to allow the board time at this meeting to consider it without those bids going stale.
Our portion of that is 47%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a standard, it's what
Isn't
we
our-
always
Yeah,
pay.
it
Isn't
goes
our
up
pro-
and down a little bit, but essentially.
Really?
It does.
Oh,
And it depends on how you look at it, yeah, it's
Exactly.
47 to 52%.
Well, how about we
53.
approve it at 47?
Sage, thank you for that. That was 2 days before I started, so I didn't see the emails. So thanks for letting me know that that came in.
I think suffice it to say what we've been able to accomplish here is the initial bid, which we were advised by city staff is $50,000 to install this bar screen, went through the process of getting that $160,000+ bid in, and because of the work of staff to get a second bid, we're now down to at least $120,000. Mr. Page?
I move we approve it.
Second.
And that was joint action that we did together with the district and
Yes,
city
gotta be
staff,
done.
so.
Yeah,
gotta be
we
done.
don't have a choice. We already went in knee-deep ordering the bar screen, and if that took forever, made in France or what, so let's just get it done. It's a necessity at this point.
To legal counsel, do we have to know what the pro rata is in order to vote on this?
No.
No.
I mean, we just thought that because it's set forth in the participation agreement, how we determine what the share, what the district share is.
The formula's already there.
Right.
It's already set.
We got a first and a second.
We got a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Moving on to item number 10, discussion of directions of staff regarding financial audits. Mr. Tate?
Yes, I asked Mr. Losak for some history on this item because I understand there's been a gap of time since financial audits have been performed. So Doug, I'll turn it over to you for more history because I just don't have it.
Right. And we've been working with John Dickerson and I believe a CPA, his name escaped me, from Lake County, on getting this, and there was actually board action taken on it a couple of years ago, directing it. It's hard to, because of the lack of information the district's been able to get from the city regarding assets and the district's interest in different assets, that getting an actual audit is going to be difficult, and most likely it's going to be a compilation, is my understanding of what the term is, and then but we do need to clear up the backlog and start moving forward. And I think the last district official audit was 2007-8 or 2008-9. Yeah, and that needs to be cleared up as quickly as possible. Move forward to try to get a compilation or an audit if possible, with an audit with exceptions, and whatever language you're going to use in it to say, this is the best they can do based on the information the auditor has, the CPA has.
Is there a statutory requirement for audits for districts?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And what is it?
Yearly.
Annual audits.
Annual audits.
Yeah.
So we're out of compliance.
Yeah.
And I think this started, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, I got a message or a letter, a phone call from the county.
The county.
And then I passed it on to Doug because I had no history with what our audit situation
Will there be
was.
sanctions for being out of compliance?
Not with the county at this point. The state may be threatening fines and other things and I need to follow up and see where we stand with that. But my suggestion is that the board approve that we start moving forward and get these audits or compilations done as quickly as possible. We clear it up as much as we can, and then start trying to move forward and do them on an annual basis. Again, like I said, when we've tried this before, a lot of the problem is simply the city was not getting documents and information that was requested from Mr. Dickerson or the CPAs, and they weren't able, and they said based on this we can't do an audit. We don't have it, and that's part of the problem of the married system of how the system has been operating for years under the participation agreement.
So what do you need? Do you need us to?
We need direction to Mr. Tate to undertake the process of getting an auditor and getting this done.
And I believe at a LAFCO meeting, we focused on this actually, and I know there are a couple different options. A district with revenue as high as ours doesn't have as many options as some of the smaller districts, but I do think we can request to have audits maybe every other year. I remember something like that, so if we could look into that. I can find out that information if you don't have it on hand, but I know exactly where it is. Maybe we can do that in the future.
I said that would be helpful because, you know, I didn't know what our audit situation was when I got here, and it was generated by that letter or phone call from someone at the county, and that's how I passed it off to Doug.
And there is, based on the income of special districts, there's different levels of audits and what you have to do.
Right.
And we can look into that and see, okay, what is it we're actually required to do, and how do we comply?
Yeah, we actually have to have one.
It's simple.
Yeah, oh yeah, we have to have one.
Let's just make it happen.
Bob, you're back to your comment. I'm just used to annual audits.
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether it's a special district or a municipality or a corporation. I'm used to annual audits.
It was difficult though when
And the simple fact is, if they can't do a complete audit properly, make an annotation to it.
Yeah.
I was
That's what we
doing the
tried.
audit, this is why I can't complete it.
We have to
period.
try.
That's all you have to do.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's all we can do.
Those will be exceptions to the
Right.
order.
Yeah, the auditor or the CPA will write, this is, you know, I can't certify this, and here's why, and this is the best I can do.
So let's just make it happen.
So move.
You got your direction.
You've got direction.
Oh, okay.
Comment?
I was just going to say, when I was next door, I went through this same issue. Flood control hadn't done one in a very long time. And I had kind of trouble, like a lot of services around here, getting a local person that I thought was good and
Right.
I ended up using Paling and Paling from Lake County, and they were really, really good. And they ended up taking over the audits for lots of the small municipalities in this building after
There.
yeah, that Paling is good.
Palin and Palin.
And I want to say it was
Yeah, they actually moved to Lake Cabo, but they still operate out of Lake County, and they still come here every year and do a bunch of audits.
Thank you.
The small municipality.
Yeah.
They're good.
We appreciate the district taking action on this item. We met with, city staff met with District Manager Michael, John Dickerson, and Chairman Ronco back in October 3rd of 2013, indicating the delinquency in the audits. At that time, we were told by John Dickerson that the 2 audits since the 7 and 8 were complete, but I don't think that is actually the case. We also discussed any needs that the district may need in access to information. We not only provided information, additional information at that time, but also had provided information prior to that for the completion of the audits. We were told at that time that the district was working with John Robertson at Lake Court to secure those audits, and that the audits for 2010, 11, 12, and 13 would be in process and would be done.
Okay.
And so we appreciate you taking action this evening to address that issue.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll follow up with it, and I know the Roberts, and so we'll try to follow up with him and see where he's at.
I think we've exhausted item number 10, and we'll move on to agenda item number 11, budget. Discussion of the city's unilateral action authorizing capital improvements in excess of $100,000 without direct approval from the district, including installations of the bar screen and authorizing the expenditure of $2.8 million for upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, wait, so we took care of the bar screen. What's the
Yes.
$2.8 million?
There was an amendment to the budget that was passed on the same day the city's budget. That was a $2.8 million for work to be done at the wastewater treatment plant regarding, and Mr. Tate may know that better than I do.
No,
So this is not approved, no.
But is the city asking for us to participate in that expense?
No idea.
Okay.
So we're not.
Don't
That's
we-
done.
Doug, don't we have some background on this agenda?
Well, the first, I think anybody from the district knew about it was when Mr. Tate read about it in the paper. And there was an agenda item that was on for June 21st in which the city approved expending $2.2 million for work to be done on the chlorine contact basin renovation. And
Do we have somebody from the city that might be able to answer that?
Yeah, so it's actually not capital improvement contract. That contract is with Cabo engineers to do what's called the engineering services during construction and construction management for the build out of the recycled water pipeline, which it won't be something that we ever ask you to cost share in. The only part of that entire thing that has anything to do with chlorine contact chamber, there's a $400,000 line item in that contract for design services to look at the need to expand it to construction costs.
So basically, you're asking for us to help participate in the 400,000? Not even? Okay.
That's part of the recycled water system as well. And I really think, this sort of unilateral action thing is really misrepresentative. I came here, I sent things to your office, letting you know we've approved the bar screen, but you need to take subsequent action to do it. I came here in person and said the same thing at your last meeting, and we extended the contract and didn't award anything until you took action tonight. So I don't see any of that as unilateral.
We're really seeking and continue to seek full cooperation with, and even on the recycled water project, we've asked now multiple times for a joint meeting on that item, not only in correspondence, but again, personally in attendance to the meeting. And so, we're hoping that we are able to gain that cooperation from the district.
That's not quite how I recall it. I mean, I've been on this board since it was created. Yeah, and this is new, okay? I don't recall it. I remember blank budgets getting passed by the city. I remember never getting documents to complete our audits for years. So coming in saying we've provided everything and when you could, no, that is not true. Maybe that's true for Sage at this point.
We'd be happy to, I'd be happy to share correspondence that we've sent to the district on this issue. And again, it's not really.
Quite frankly, as a district representative, I don't want to take part in sinking millions of dollars into recycled water that I don't think our ratepayers will benefit from. I'm sorry.
Mr. Ronco? Chair Ronco, can I speak? Yes. Sage, just one of your emails or letters that you sent, I believe, stated that since the district has not determined that recycled water is the best possible use and to go forward, that the district was not being invited to participate. I can show you that email.
We've asked a number of times and continue to ask for the opportunity to be able to present the feasibility analysis and kind of open that door to the district and continue to open that door.
I disagree.
To the district.
Well, actually, I do remember when Sean came in and talked with our, so there was that discussion.
Well, I could provide you, I don't know if not all the information and correspondence that we send makes it to all district board members. We do follow the guidelines that the district has provided us and told us to transmit information to the district. But again, I'm here not to rehash the past. It's about how can we move forward and the cooperative effort.
So Sean, I'm sorry, not Sean, Sage, are you asking for our district manager to perhaps organize something that we would have a meeting?
And we're extending the invitation, and we've had to extend it and we'll continue to extend that invitation. We've been directed to do so by our council to continue extending that invitation and they welcome cooperation and collaboration, especially anything that avoids costly litigation. Currently, the amount of money that is being spent on litigation.
The thing is,
we're talking about wastewater right now.
But we're talking about cooperation.
I know, but let's talk about the cooperation with the wastewater, not litigation.
Well, I
We
don't know.
can't discuss that right now.
The only thing
This is my public comment for this item, and so, my time is up, then my
Your
time is up.
Thank you. And this is something that we do need to work on. The city has embarked on the recycled water, and they've come up with a plan, and it's a little late for us to be making any recommendations as to how their plan is going to be efficient, but
I don't think it would hurt to have the city make a presentation as to how they're progressing along with their plans.
yeah, we received one presentation previously, and that was in April of last year, I believe.
Sure. So
I think that, let's see what's there. Contempt before investigation will keep us in eternal ignorance.
well, okay. Either way. So at this point, the item had to do with something that now is irrelevant. Am I right? Because we've
Yes.
passed the bar screen. The 28 million wasn't
2.8.
2.8 was not. So basically, item 11 is scratched.
Okay.
Right?
It's done.
Although we could also direct Mr. Tate to work with city staff to get a presentation.
Well, I think when Sean and I met and Ken met with the plan, I think that was kind of the starting point, at least for me it was, because that was my first introduction to the city, and I'd be more than happy to sit down with Sage and get to know you, and same on your side, and start a new course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very much appreciate that.
So no, my commitment's there. I'm still in a learning mode with the district, so I'm a sponge right now. So that was the beauty of the treatment plant tour the other day.
As far as the recycling water though, that train has left the station long ago and left our board behind. It's a little late for us to be running after it at this point. That's how I feel. I don't want to.
Okay.
I mean,
That's fine. You can feel like that. That's okay.
you go to city council meetings and sit in on their meetings and
Sure,
get
I have.
the information on that.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 12, discussion and possible action regarding the city's failure to follow the budget process as required by the participation agreement, amendment number 1. Mr. Losak?
Well, I mean, all of you know this as well as I do regarding the failure, there was a budget was passed by the city without any real opportunity for the district to be involved or have any input in it. My understanding is on June 21st, the day it was passed, the district dropped the 992-page budget on the city. The city dropped the 992-page budget on the table and said that this is it, and we're going to go talk about it and have it passed with the city right after they left here. The process for a budget, they're supposed to get us the documents months before, and the district has been trying to get that back and forth. There has been some fault on the district's part because of the lack of a district manager for a while to be able to go back and forth with them, discuss it line by line. There is a appeal process or a process in their participation agreement for trying to address issues regarding the budget. And if the district board would like me to, I can start working with the district manager on how we proceed and to start that process.
Sounds great.
I don't believe this situation is any different than it was last year, the year before, the year before. However, we have made directions in previous attempts to resolve this issue where we advised the city that they could pay normal operating costs until such time as a budget was presented. And no budget has been presented, and they continue to pay whatever expenses are they deem to be necessary. So we've started this process once before on the previous budget, got out there.
Yeah, okay, but at this point, I want to help Joe.
Well, we need to move forward. I mean,
We gotta get Joe on board here, and the only way that's gonna happen is he starts, we get a line of communication established, and I think that's what you just recommended.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, a question from the new guy with Sage and Sean here. And the board, of course, giving me direction. Can somebody explain to me what the past few years have been as far as how the budget process has proceeded with both the city and the board? So I know how we've done this.
The past 3 years probably is not a good example. Right?
Yeah,
I think
I think we need to move forward.
Well, that's an indicator, right?
The last 2 years, like last year, we started meeting, I think, in February or January, and went through a lot of iterations. The main pushback we got was from John Dickerson saying that it wasn't complete, he wasn't going to look at it until it was complete. And I said, of course it isn't, we're in the process of developing it. And then at some point we'll have an admin draft that everyone can review, and then we'll get comments on that, and then we'll do a final. And that really never progressed until we delivered a draft. This year, I sent, again, using the same, I sent John Dickerson and Chair Ronco a whole budget schedule when it was going to start. I did it on May 2nd. Never heard anything back. Then I got a draft from Dan on May 18th. I sent that to Chair Ronco as well. Never heard anything back, like literally not. And I have both of them here. You can look at them.
And excuse me, Sean, that is a sanitation budget, not a city budget you're discussing.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
is a budget
I'll read
for
to you.
the city and the sanitation district, not as a department of the city.
I never intimated that. Okay, so in the first one I sent to you, I thought you might find a presentation on cost allocation, particular interest, and serve as an opportunity for your board to provide input. So I wasn't treating you in any way that was like some lesser thing.
No.
And then on the second email, I finished it. Please let me know when you have time to receive and review the draft budget, and it's titled Draft Wastewater Budget. So there was no failure on my part to send people the timelines and the whole calendar for development. There was no failure on my time to let people know when the draft was ready. And really, I just brought you the final because I wanted at least other people that are in the room to have a copy to see that.
Sure. You know, I think that one of the realities that you would have to face is that we had lost our district manager. And during that time, there was a real problem trying to get communications going and so on. Thank goodness we have a new district manager. I think that we can get a new start with that and hopefully not get this.
I don't disagree with that, but I think the tone of these agenda items don't reflect that at all.
Well, can you explain, you adopted a budget.
Yes.
Meeting is supposed to be a joint adoption of a budget.
So people have to return emails and phone calls for those things to happen. And if you sit on your hands and do nothing, We have to, in the end of the day, pay employees, pay insurance, buy chemicals, and we can't wait for a non-responsive entity to respond.
This isn't, I got my 3 minutes. This cycle isn't the first cycle. The previous cycle on the last budget, we started in March. We went through a series, with the district's request to say we want to be at the ground floor with the development of the budget. We started early. We went through that. We got past the July 1st. We each met in joint session and we took action saying, okay, more time to review. We passed a continuing resolution to review. Then there was more time needed by the district. So we met in joint session again in August of 16 and then said we'll give it to December 31st. December 31st rolled around. There was nothing. We sent correspondence saying, boy, we need to meet in joint session again. The city, not with no response back from the district, we passed a resolution continuing another session and passed to give additional time to the district to come to the table. Again, the district did not come to the table, and we did then take unilateral action on approval of the last year's budget. So again, this has been a cycle of us reaching out, extending beyond the timelines in which both parties have agreed to try to get collaboration and cooperation on the budget cycle. And so we're sitting here today, if there's a renewed interest in opening up those lines of communication, we're all for it. We're all in.
Good.
And have been all in.
That sounds great.
Okay, can I say time out for a minute? Okay, that's all in the past. Let's move forward.
Thank you, Robert.
We have a new district manager. Let's move forward.
Okay.
And enough with the infomercials.
We've beaten this thing into a freaking dead hole.
Okay. Great. Okay, so what do we need to do now?
Give direction to our.
Well, quite frankly, when a 992-page budget was slapped on the table, what was I supposed to do with it?
I don't know, but, so at this
There's
point, we
how
need
many of us
to-
that need to look at that, and that's, well, what page is this the sewer district on, or what page is the sewer on? I don't know. It's all mingled together. It all relates to each other. Here, take it. I found that completely offensive. I don't know if anybody else sitting here was offended by that, but I was.
Okay.
That was sassy, and I don't like sassy.
We translated it before though, and
You know, I thought we just about got out of this. So, Jim, can we move
We've
forward?
exhausted the 10 minutes public expression for this agenda item. We are going to the board.
Do we give direction to?
Are we reviewing the budget, or what are we doing? What's the action?
Well, we have never formally
Accepted the budget.
looked at a budget. We got a 992-page budget. Mr. Tate
Last
has had less than 2 weeks or 3 weeks to even look at it.
I think this goes back to our general feeling, Bob's comments specifically of, I need to sit down with Sage and with Sean and start a new dialogue that results in a new process that we all abide by. And I'm committed to do that.
we welcome that.
Great. So the direction of the board is for you to do so. Great. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now going to move on to item number 13, consideration of new technology professional services provider.
Right. That issue came up, and I don't know, Doug, how far we want to go with the details.
Yeah.
But the issue came up because of some failure of our technology system and the, I'll just say, significant need for a whole system upgrade of the district's IT system. And I'll leave it at that. If you want me to go farther than that, then I feel I'm stepping out on a limb.
Do we have an estimated cost?
Oh, no, we just.
We have to give him direction.
We've just
to
started.
investigate it.
We just started basically because of things that were happening with our system.
Sure.
That made it impossible for us to do business. And just coming from the outside, it was just, it's unacceptable.
So directed.
Direction to staff.
Direction to move forward.
You want to?
Yeah.
To a motion to
Yeah, I was just gonna
have to
say.
give him the authority to enter into a new professional service contract that will need to be approved by the board, but at least to get you guys moving and give him some authority to.
Yeah, I just need to bring something back.
So
to the
moved.
board.
Second.
Second?
All in
Further
favor?
comment?
I might suggest that you modify that motion because some of the things that have to be done can't wait till your next board meeting. So I think you have to give the district manager the authority to enter into an agreement.
Up to a dollar limit?
Well, I think there's some issue, Duncan, thank you for interjecting there. I think there's some equipment, not terribly expensive equipment, as we've discussed. I think there's some equipment that immediately needs to be purchased long before the next board meeting. But coming back with a holistic plan and a professional services provider, that needs to come back for the board. But there are some things that I need in the interim.
But we would probably expend not more than 5,000.
Not even, no.
Like, what are we talking about?
We need some laptops, we need some.
We need some new technology. We need some new technology.
I know our copier's on its last leg.
Well, it's
Much more than that.
I won't comment. I don't want to make it into a public thing.
A member of the public wishing to make a comment?
I would just say that I feel Joe's pain. I was in the same spot when I took over flood control. And we ended up leasing a small Rico from Icon, I think it is. Like, so for making your board package, you can shove the whole thing in there. It'll save it as a PDF. You can post it right on your website. And we ended up leasing it. It was actually much cheaper than buying it, and you're not stuck with the maintenance and everything else. And even the website you have now, you get the ability to just shove your whole package through and turn it into a PDF easily, but I think will really improve your ability to get stuff out.
That's kind of the concept we're talking about. And the issue is not just with hardware. It's software. It's the incapability of the website to handle what we need to load to it. So there's a myriad of moving pieces here, and I want to come back with a full report to the board to say, here's what we need to
But
do.
you do have some authority to go ahead and move forward if something's in it.
Yeah, there's some critical items.
We have
Up
critical
to a
items.
dollar limit.
Up to a dollar limit of $5,000.
Fine, so moved.
Yeah. That'll get us through until I can come back.
Got it. So do you need a second on that?
So we have a motion and a second and a modified motion and a second and a modified motion
And a dollar limit.
and a dollar limit. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Duncan.
Now we're going to move on to item number 4, discussion and possible action, transferring the district.
14.
14?
Yeah.
Yes, 14.
14.
There is a 4 in there.
Is this item related?
Item number 14, discussion and possible action of transferring the district checking account to a different financial institution.
You understand what that
And I think that Joe and I can both testify to the absolute, total, and complete frustration we experienced in our attempt to remove from the checking account former district manager Nick Michael and adding Mr. Tate as one of the signatories, with not being able to have Teresa, who's also a signature on the card, be a satellite,
Sure.
a decentralized signature.
So we made a couple of runs at them. The first one, they said we needed certain individuals present, and that we needed the former manager present when we took his name off, which we found out was not the case after we did a little more investigating. The second attempt we made was Chairman Ronco and I and Danielle, because she does our banking. And that was again rejected because we didn't have Teresa there, and we didn't have, again, they were flipping back and forth on whether Frank needed to be there or not. So it got to the point where the attitude of the relationship manager, I think that was his title.
I think that's his title, yeah.
Was, sorry.
Okay, so is the, you're just looking for a different institution?
I think what we need to do is have a board motion and direction authorizing the closing of the B of A account with the signature of the district manager and Teresa or I, and the creation of a new account at Redwood Credit Union.
I was going to suggest a credit union.
And if I could make the suggestion, don't close any accounts until we open the new ones, so we have somewhere to move that money.
Yes.
And then two, to open a new account at any of these things, we don't need former signatories of the old account, because we're not closing it.
So then I like the idea of using a local credit union. Local credit union?
I think there was a, Mr. Chair, I think there's a comment.
I was just going to say, been there, done that as well. I'm a RCU customer, but they didn't really seem to understand the whole special district thing as well as I thought. The savings bank in Mendocino totally has it down, and it's nice that they have a branch downtown and one right over here.
Is there a reason
That's
why?
what we ended up using, and they did a great job.
Is there a reason why savings bank wasn't considered?
We haven't kicked anybody out.
Okay, that's
We're bringing it to the board for input as to what you think the direction should be to me.
like local.
Yeah, local.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at the
So make
fees
it
or
a-
costs or
Right,
concerns.
compare savings bank
Yeah.
and Redwood Credit Union or Mendel
Middle Lake
Credit
Credit
Union.
or whoever.
Yeah, I would say
Right,
those three.
and see who knows how to work with a special district and
Yeah, it was just readily apparent that Bank of America was not caring about our business.
Okay, let's,
Whether it was $1 million or $1, it really didn't seem like Jim and I were making any headway with the relationship manager.
okay.
And I think it's an institutional issue
Yeah.
of that bank, not necessarily the relationship
Okay,
manager.
so
Okay.
I think you'll find it's an issue brought about by the Dodd-Frank federal bill. It has nothing to do with.
You know,
Here's it.
discussion.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to authorize Joe to investigate a new depository prior to the closing of our current account.
who made the motion?
Local, yes.
Local.
Bob made the motion.
Who seconded?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're down to item number 15, announcement, other business matters from staff.
Only quick comments, because I know we're running way down. I've attended the plant tour thanks to Sean and Sage and the staff. I did my best with Duncan and Doug to follow along as I did the Cook's property tour of the boundaries and of the service territory with some of the adjoining managers in this office here. So I'm learning as fast as I can.
Well, that then takes us to closed session.
Okay.